It's time, and we've reached a quorum. Could we invite the administration team into the room, please?
2.57嘅，之前都有即係都有問過，咁睇下委員需唔需要再問翻以前，如果唔係就開始翻關於一個嗰啲車即係再啲動作嗰度。2.58係啦，咁同埋另一樣咧就關長咧就升咗職，即係助理關長，而家就係副關長嘅。關長升咗職？係啊，咩都報，幾時升職？就係即係呢2個禮拜嘅事嚟嘅。升 official。係啊 ，official 嘅，而家係副關長，以前係助理關長。哦。我哋多唔多嘢？跟住多唔多嘢問佢哋關長㗎？但係陸路就會多，因為跟嘅仲係在陸路，咁可能跟住海路，因為海關喺陸。咁而家係唔係陸㗎？而家仲係陸路，咁如果完嘅時候就可以睇下需唔需要再海關下次嚟咯。呢個就要睇下大家。好，我哋可以開始
Welcome the administration team. The secretary have other commitments due to the flu situation. What if the undersecretary is not coming? They have a constitutional duty to appear before the PAC. And when necessary, we will convene for another meeting which they are required to attend. If they're not coming, I wouldn't be wasting our time by calling a meeting without the secretaries appearing. We have the right to summon them to appear before us. The secretary understands. However, the undersecretary, if it is not coming, I don't see why there's no representative. Well, I welcome you to come. However, you're an administrative officer, and you don't have to be politically accountable. The undersecretary haven't called and explained his absence. I could have not convened this meeting. However, we are quite busy. For example, the Deputy Commissioner of Custom Excise have just been promoted, and yet they are willing to come, and so does our colleagues. Next time, we need to call for another meeting, and it's still not appearing. I will not call for a meeting. At least you should have a representative here. Instead, we don't have any politically appointed officials in the meeting. This is unacceptable. Thank you, Chairman. Allow me to say a few things. No, don't need to. If you want to explain it, forget about it. The secretary had explained to me already. The undersecretary had the other future center, so everyone have their own business to attend. Well, the Customer Excise Commissioner and you also have other duties. This is our duty. We need to call all the meetings within 3 months and draft a report. If you're not cooperative, there's no way I can help you. I understood it perfectly. It's just we didn't have some coordination that they have to come. If the people not coming, anything more important than the PAC? If they're not coming, that we could just call up the meeting, let the secretary explain herself clearly, and we would have understood. Thank you. Anything on policy and what kind of political responsibility we take? I don't want you to answer questions like this, because I don't want to make you answer questions related to them. And pardon me, colleagues. Last time, we were at para 2.57. I suppose we don't have to return to previous sections, and now we move on to 2.58, shall we? Mrs. Stephen Ho, you're the first one. Thank you, Chairman. First, I concur with Chairman's remarks. I remember at the first meeting on this chapter that it was Ms. Sylvia Chan, and the second time the Undersecretary, and the third time both of them didn't show up. I see gradually they seem to attach less and less importance to PAC. I think administration should take note. Okay, I got it. No further explanation needed. Okay, let's turn on the microphone. And during the first chapter, the secretary attend all the meetings. For the chapter 2, for the first meeting, the secretary did attend. The second time was attended by the undersecretary. And from then on, there were either the secretary or the undersecretary himself. Well, it seemed to be the officials are getting lower and lower rank, and this time didn't show up altogether. I hope that next time you will take the meeting very seriously. I know that the flu crisis in place. However, if there's no explanation to the public, that seems to appear bad to the public. For 2.58 on the requirement of vehicles transporting shield foods, according to case 4, that a vehicle would not be approved for a transporting shield part carry such food and enter the Mankamto Food Control Office for CFS consignment inspection. Can you explain that for the vehicle transporting vegetables, chilled or frozen food, they need to be registered, and what is the procedures? And how many random inspection or do they need to register every now and then? Or the registration invalid for 10 years? Can you give some bit of background? Okay, I'll have Dr. Christine Wong to explain to you. I'll have Dr. Wong to explain that the vehicles carrying chilled poultry and food, and what are the requirements and the inspection situation. Dr. Wong? According to Mr. Stephen Wong, on the regulation of vehicles, according to 1328K, the import game, meat, poultry, and eggs regulations, Cap 1328K, will issue a written permission in which we have a additional condition that for the meat and poultry carrying vehicles, they need to apply for a license. We have 189 vehicles have been approved by the FHT for the transport of chilled game, meat, poultry, and eggs. The previous practice was that upon approval, that the registration is indefinite. And after the audit report, we have taken improvement measures. And Mankamto, we check whether the vehicles have such license to take follow-up. So previously, you wouldn't check whether the vehicles would have been registered then. So do you nod? Well, we can't put it in the report if you just nod. No, we didn't have that in place. Why didn't you? Why ask to register but didn't check? So what's the point of registering, Dr. Wang? The reason for them to register that, according to 63 of the audit report, they actually need to fulfill a series of conditions. We will inspect the vehicle to make sure they meet any conditions. For example, the temperature will be at 0 to 4 Celsius, since they are transporting game, meat, and poultry. And in the vehicles, they need to install a thermometer. And our colleagues at the BCP haven't quite looked at the license individually. And now we will actually check each vehicle. As in, when you talk about now, as in when do you start it? So which month starting? I need to confirm the exact month before getting back to you. So you didn't have this practice in place. When you say about now, that means it's just recently. Yeah. Mr. Ho? Well, I'm asking this. When in page 63, you have this intention of stipulating this vehicles that are able to meet the capability and the chillness, and yet you haven't quite discharged this function, and the electrical administration actually earmarked funding for this. And how many people are responsible for the registration, and which department do you handle that? Well, they're handled by the same group of staff at Bankam Cho. Stephen Ho asking how many staff. If you don't such information, you can just get back to us after the meeting. And Chairman, in the entire report, there's a running problem. There's a establishment control and testing. There's no regular review of the work to make sure they stick to the guidelines to give rise to all such problems. That upon registration, there will be no inspection. Well, at the end, it's about staff management. Have the department bureau actually look into this problem? Well, for this value for money, why are we need to get such detail? Besides, we're using public resources, and you are powerful, a fairly young department carrying out in such important work. And yes, good governance and management is also critical. And upon going through this two report, it seems things are out of control. I think, for example, Dr. Wang and Dr. Ho are working diligently. However, their supervision and the guidelines provided are a lot of them. However, there's this series of mishaps when it comes to the implementation. I think you should take a very hard look. It's not that because you only act upon the audit department reports. And second, it shows that the bureau does have a problem. It's not like you need to roll your sleeve when, let's say, flu outbreak. You should actually do it without asking question. We bring up these questions, just want to get to note a bigger picture of any deficiencies in your whole bureau. Mr. Ho. So I know when does this first student start initiated for the vehicle registration? And so when did this started? I need to go see when did we start it. And since 123AK and the additional conditions and the specific conditions imposed, so it's quite early on then. So all along you haven't do the inspection, which give to the consequences. So let's say if a registered first vehicle with you, if I change the vehicle but keep the car license, do I need to reapply? Let's say my car plate AB1234, and you checked the vehicle's 0 to 4 Celsius. Now that I change to another vehicle while it's aging or I have a car crash and so on, if I replace with new vehicle, do I need to re-register with you or re-inspect? So the license plate is the same. If they need to transport any chilled poultry and game and so on, and to comply with that, we have a new improvement measures For each vehicle, when they pass through a mine control, we'll first check whether they have the import permission. And assume that after we issue the license, we didn't do regular inspection. A new measure is that every 2 years, we'll actually re-inspect the vehicle. Dr. Wong used that. So the answer is no, and just because the institution is in place. So if the car broke down or been phased out or replaced, you apply for a new license so that the new vehicle would be inspected. So what is actually system? We already got the understanding system, which gave rise to Mr. Ho's question. Please don't be too nervous. It's just some of the officials are absent, so we need to remind them. So you can just answer your question calmly and slowly. Don't be nervous. So under the system, if there's a completely new vehicle with the same car license, so they don't have to inform us. We have to see whether this new vehicle will comply with the specified conditions before issuing a new license. So by theory, they have to come back, and whether they require them to come back or not, if there any penalty if they don't come back to Mancom. So let's say I don't come back, so only when I caught, and after 2 years time, by then I could have transporting food for about 2 years. You know where the Mr. Ho question come from? Well, let's say they've been importing something inappropriate, and maybe it just once they give rise to huge problems. The point of asking this question is for us to draft a report and to look forward. Thank you, Chairman and Mr. Ho. Allow me to explain. Even if you apply the license from us currently at the Mancom Show, we will actually inspect every vehicle. We found out they haven't get the license from and didn't comply with the conditions. We already entitled to collect evidence and claim that they're in breach of the conditions, and which we will follow up. So let me explain. Let's say after they crossing the BCP, let's say we know they're transporting chilled meat and we have no such license explained, and then you can go to the FCO for inspection. And what will you do to inspect them? So ensure that the temperature stay at 0 to 4 Celsius, or whether the vehicles have been changed, or whether the structuring have meet the maintenance standards. So what would you do? Dr. Wang, don't need to thank him. Okay, I was as well as a courtesy that we thank you. We have taken some improvement measures that all the vehicles carry a record and a list, and for each vehicle coming, we'll check whether they're on the list, and do something additional for the inspection results that we enter a system. And we took an extra step recently. The members reminder even said mentioned on the report, and sometimes we have the clerical error when inputting license plate numbers or license numbers. And now therefore 160 license plates into our system, so as a double safeguard. If there are any input error, the system will alert the staff that this car is not on the list, and the vehicle will need to double check. Is it the input error or the vehicle actually is not on the list? And another measure, besides the system in the establishment management, like the chairman said, we need to address the shortcomings in our management. And at the BCP, we have something at the management level. They will do some random checking of the records to check for any clear input errors. The advantage is that for any errors, they could address on the same day. And from responding to Mr. Ho's question, so do we actually do? First, we check whether they have a license. and we'll actually inspect the vehicle, send it to stay at 0 to 4 Celsius. And we need to check whether the thermometer is between that range. So you inspect the vehicle every 2 years, and we check them every time they come to the FCO. So what's the difference between the two inspections? And you claim that you will check the thermometer. But is it accurate, or you will actually use your own to compare it? So there's two things.
So they can also recalibrate their thermometer. So how can you tell if it's true? Because we don't want to have that loophole in the system. All right, in taking samples and so on, we would also be checking the temperature within the compartment, and they also have a record because right in front of the driver in a vehicle, there is a temperature record. So there is a temperature device which constantly records the temperature. So we'll be checking that on a regular basis. Also, we'll also be checking the goods and also the importation documentation. So we'll check the health certificate and so on. We will also be checking the goods items to find if they comply with the temperature requirement, and when necessary, we can also take samples for testing. But then, most importantly, we have another team of colleagues, because there is a team of colleagues responsible for checking, and also they'd also be recording the checking records, and then another team of colleagues will also be entering the details into the system. So you would also be checking the chilling temperature, right? Because the serial number is at odds with the health certificates, and if you find that there is any discrepancy, what are you going to do? So is it like what you said last time? So would you be asking or going to the source of everything? So the question that I asked was they might not be able to supply you with the information because the distribution was done by the company, not the driver at the front line. So what are you going to do then? Well, we have already introduced some enhancement measures, and also for our colleagues, in order to enable our frontline officers to do their job, there is a checklist. So there is a checklist for them to do what they are supposed to do. Another further improvement is that there will be senior health inspectors who would also be conducting supervisory checks. So they'd be doing so every week, and they'll be giving advice to the frontline officers, so there would be more communication. And we've also reminded colleagues to look at the serial number. So we have already done that. But then for the seal number, other than doing this with the importers, we have also been maintaining very close liaison with the mining authorities, and according to our understanding, so they'd be putting this seal number on, and also looking at the records in November and December. All the vehicles have been sealed, and there is always a seal number. It's not that there is no seal number, it's that the seal number is different from the seal number in the documents, because as we said last time, for the goods imported from the mainland, and they might have changed the containers halfway, and as a result, the seal number might be changed. That's the reason why the seal number was different. Well, Mr. Ho, indeed, earlier on, I also went to Guangzhou to talk to them on this. And the reason why, you can see that on the health certificate, let's say, if it says that there are 10 tons, but then in the end, when it arrives in Hong Kong, there's only 8 or 5 tons. That's because they've already distributed the consignment, and the seal number would therefore be different. All right. So distribution and also segregating them into different consignments would be a normal flow of work for them. So how do you talk to them to make sure that the records would be completed properly, so that, as let's say, 3 tons have gone into this truck, and then 5 tons have come to Hong Kong, and so on. So how can you make sure that the records are complete, so that you'd be able to have comprehensive records of all the consignments coming to Hong Kong? Let's say, well, 5 tons of beef might have come from another truck into Hong Kong. So how are you able to ensure that your system would enable you to know where it's from, and also the SAR government and also the public will be able to tell where they come from? So that's the source of the meat. So do you understand the question, Dr. Wong? So they might have changed the goods halfway, and as a result, you don't know the source of the meat. So how are you going to resolve this problem? Yes, we do attach a lot of importance to that. That's why we've been having meetings with the customs and excise counterparts on the mainland on this. And even if they have changed vehicles halfway, well, they have SORA check. They have customs and excise people monitoring the whole process. So that's point number one. And number two, well, even if that happens, what they are able to do now, according to our records, they've been able to make sure that even for goods coming from outer provinces, on the records, they always have that seal number. They've been able to do that. So please rest assured that the records are complete. But then in individual cases, if that should happen, well, we have already told our colleagues that they would have to contact the mainland authorities or the customs and excise on the mainland, because we do have this liaison mechanism in place with our counterparts on the mainland, so as to ensure that once the health certificate has been issued, there is a guarantee on the quality. But then without the seal number, our colleagues will also have to talk to the customs and excise people on the mainland. But then I'd also like to add this, my apologies for that, because recently, according to the records that we have seen, that has not happened again. But then in the future, in the event that that should happen again, then we will talk to the customs and excise people before the goods would be released. All right, I'm happy with that. I hope that through the documents, in particular 2D and 2A, the administration would understand that it's not a problem with the guidelines. It's about the enforcement or compliance with the guidelines. So it's the Department of Health and also the Bureau's responsibilities. So I'll stop at that. Yes, Tanya, your turn now. Thank you. All right, it's on 2C. So it's about the control of foods imported by sea. So that's part 2C. So for the CF, the Center for Food Safety, all right, they have different ways of dealing with that. Well, that's at the import point at Kwai Ching Container Terminal, and also for fresh aquatic products. So for different CFS and so on, what are their responsibilities, and what kind of food will they be focusing on? So, Director, yes, I'll defer to Dr. Ho, the controller for food safety. Dr. Ho, well, I'll briefly go over that. Yes, you can go into the details. Well, for foods imported by sea, so they'll mainly be passing through the Kwai Ching Container Terminal before they enter Hong Kong, and a small number of them will come through the Cheung Sha Wan wholesale market and also the Western wholesale market. But then that would be confined to freshwater products from the mainland. And in terms of officers, we have four CFS officers to deal with foods imported by sea. One is called the Hong Kong and Kowloon office, and another one is the Food Importer Distributor Registration and Import Licensing Office. So we call that FIRLO. And then to deal with freshwater products, we have a waterfront office at the Cheung Sha Wan wholesale food market, and also at the Western District. In the Western District, we also have the WWFM waterfront office. So they're responsible for checking freshwater aquatic products from the mainland. For the two offices that I referred to, there is a division of labor for the HKKO and also the FIRLO. Our colleagues would be responsible for checking those consignments with import documents, including chilled meats and also frozen meat, eggs, and also milk and frozen confections, where they come with health certificates and so on. And through the food surveillance program, we'll be collecting samples, and we would also be checking the documentation. In this regard, our practice has been modeled after overseas experience. For example, after taking samples from these food items, if we need to conduct physical inspection, then at the warehouse or private slaughterhouses would be conducting those checks. And for this type of checks, we have actually made inquiries with several countries and jurisdictions. They've been doing the same, including Australia, New Zealand, Ireland. Japan, Singapore. So they all adopt the same practice. So most of the inspections would be conducted at the private slaughterhouse or cold stores or importers' warehouses and so on. And a few years back, we already stepped up this type of inspections. Let's say if we see that there are different types of food where the health hazards would be higher, then at the Pt1 Customs and Excise building, there is a food inspection office and would be targeting certain consignments. So we'll see if they've been involved in previous food incidents and whether or not they are subject to statutory regulation, for example, import game, meat, poultry, and eggs, and so on, and foods with higher risk, for example, foods from Japan, and in the past they've been banned from the 5 provinces or prefectures from Japan. And also that's the FIRLO, and our colleagues at the FIRLO would issue import licenses to the importers. So for food consignments with import licenses, we'll see if we need to carry out inspection on certain consignments. And to go into a bit of further detail, when inspection has to be carried out, we'll take samples, telling them that we have to carry out a physical inspection, and then we will inform the importer in advance that we have taken samples from that consignment and we have to carry out physical inspection on them, and the importer will be required to provide the details, including when they're going to arrive at Hong Kong, and also the import documents will also have to be submitted for inspection, and they will also have to make an appointment with us in order to arrange for our colleagues to go and conduct the inspection. So that's all for my introduction. Tanya? Now that Dr. Ho has already told us the work of the CFSS, and also should we also ask the Deputy Commissioner of Customs and Excise to tell us what they do in order to enable us to have a fuller picture of how things are done. Yes, Deputy Commissioner. Thank you, Chairman. Well, just now, Dr. Ho said that at the Kwai Chong Customs and Excise building, we do have a location for physical inspection, and starting from 2015, we have leased that to the CFS for such checks. So the CFS, after taking over that those premises, arrangements have been made for them to check on the containers and so on. And in terms of the manpower resources that have been deployed for that, those will be arranged by the CFS. So, Chairman, basically for the Hong Kong Customs and Excise, that's how things are done. Okay? Okay. Now the floor is open to questions. Yes, as the Deputy Commissioner just said, that's about the Kwai Chong office. So that's the first part that we have to look at under Part 2C, well, I have to tell you the story or the background to this, because as the Customs and Excise just said, well, in March and May 2015, the FDH panel of this council was already concerned about the Kwai Chung container terminal because there's no such food inspection premises available, and as a result, they were not able to carry out inspection on such imported food items, and subsequently, such a checkpoint was established. So they have established this food control officers in the light of our recommendation. I think that's very good for them to take heed of our advice. So in October that year, the Food Control Office was set up, and in the audit report, they've also taken pictures. That's photograph 28 and 29. So that shows the CFS station at the KCCH checkpoint. And as you can see here, it's very clean. And it's so clean and tidy that it looks like nobody's using it at all. And then according to the CFS, if you look at para 2.76, it says that there is no such arrangement. And as Dr. Ho just said, so they will have to do it by way of an appointment system. So I do have some concerns about this, because according to their explanation, after the audit report was released, indeed the audit also found out that since the establishment of the CFS station up until June 2018, only 47 physical inspections were carried out since 2010. So that's in para 2.81, and according to para 2.83, the CFS informed Audit that the inspections conducted at the KCCH checkpoint had limitations, which accounted for the low usage rate, and most of the inspections would be conducted at warehouses or cold stores of the importers. So we'd also like to find out, well, in 2015, when you set up the CFS station, was it that you didn't notice those limitations? And then after finding out the limitations, so when did you find out that there were limitations? So it's almost 3 years since the establishment of the CFS station, and are there any measures to improve the situation? Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. Well, at the KCCH checkpoint, when the CFS station was set up, we already knew that the facilities there were inadequate, and there's no cold store or chilling facilities, and we talked to the trade back then if there's a need for us to carry out inspections, because our greatest concerns, the difference between doing the inspection at the cold store and checking it at the checkpoint, well, when we do the inspection at the cold store, then we would not be able to see see how the seal is broken in front of us. And if we were to do that at the KCCH checkpoint, then we'd be able to see how the seal is taken off. So at the time, we told the trade that when necessary, we would go to the cold store to check the consignment, and then the seal would have to be broken in front of us at the cold store. So we didn't have any case warranting such arrangements. So who made the decision that there was no need for such measure to be taken? And then we explored into that further, and as we told you before, we hope that at the KCCH checkpoint, we'd like to have some cold storage facilities. So we will continue to look into the feasibility of that. In the past month or so, we have also looked at our discussion with the trade to see if it's possible for us to conduct the inspection at the checkpoint, and we have also chosen 2 consignments where action was taken. So we asked for that consignment to be sent to the cold store, and then our colleagues would be monitoring the process of opening the seal, and then they would carry out the inspection. And on both occasions, we found that it was feasible. So in future, we have to look at it from 2 perspectives. One, we'll see if we can have a cold store at the KCCH checkpoint, and where appropriate, we would also ask for certain consignments to go to the private cold store for inspection.
Chairman, do you understand this? I just want to know when you started requiring them to break the seal in front of you. It said that the report in the report that it wasn't possible. So let's don't jump from one point to another. In the past 3 years, my question is, or was, in the past 3 years, please don't tell me that you discover that after the report, that it is not possible not to do it in a cold store. You cannot say that they are fresh in Brazil and then they come here fresh. It has been aged. Aged beef is very good. It depends. Well, if it is aged for 3 months at sea, you dare not eat it. Now, if you say that a few people use it and therefore you don't need to care about it, is it the case? Now, the point that the checkpoint is there because the electrical members ask for that, and then you set up partitions, put a few chairs and tables just to ward off the electrical members. I think this is the cold store is a very basic facility. Does it mean that the customs don't give you the space, or what? The biggest issue is that in 2015 you set up KCCH and you didn't use it. Can you explain to us what is the problem and why you are not able to do it, and why you have not explained it until there is this audit report? It's impossible not to have hot plates or stoves in the kitchen. You don't have salads every day, do you? Chairman, let me explain. Previously, when we answered the Audit Commission on the cold stores and also conducting inspections at the warehouses, we refer to the general situation. We refer to several thousand such inspections we did in a year. If we were to witness the breaking of the seal, that would not be possible. And that is also not in line with international practice. International practice is that the goods are laid at the store and then the inspectors will come to check. Say if we have chosen a consignment which we believe is of high risk, usually the quantity is smaller and the number of cases is smaller. We believe that we can conduct such an inspection at the cold stores. In the past few years, we have not done this. I would like to thank the Audit Commission for pointing out the problem. Therefore, we look into the issue. If we are to have a cold store facility in Kwai Chung, will that be possible? And what is the time frame? Well, it is impossible to do it within a short period of time. So we go back a little bit. Since we have agreed with the trade that we can conduct inspection at the cold stores, witnessing the breaking of the seal, would that be not possible? We think there may be that may require a lot of time. We talk to the cold stores. They say that it's not easy. Loading at the cold stores is very busy, and our colleagues may be exposed to risk because of the moving of goods around. So if we have to wait for a long period of time to deal with this issue, that will not be reasonable. Therefore, we ask our colleagues to try out the arrangement in the past 2 weeks. On one inspection, we spent the whole day. We waited for the unloading for half a day, and then we conducted the inspection for the rest of the day. And the time is longer than what is required at Kwai Chung. Yet we still find that acceptable. So in the future, if we are to deal with high-risk consignments and the Kwai Chung checkpoint has not got a cold store facility, then we will do that at the cold store and witness the breaking of the seal. I want to ask at Kwai Chung, what is the actual or the real problem in setting up a cold store? In paragraph 2.79, in September 2018, that was a few months ago, CFS has said that it was impossible because it took a lot of time. And 2.78, paragraph 2.78, Audit noted that the food consignments, the seal of the food consignment was broken before you came to check, and they raised their concern. Dr. Ho said that witnessing the breaking of seal might require 1 day, 1 whole day. So you need to balance that. Whether you ask them whether you have a cold store in Kwai Chung, or whether you do it at a cold store, I really don't know what you're going to do and how much time is required to do that. Now, it seems that you can do it at Kwai Chung and you can also do it at the cold store. Are you going to do both? Or you just wait until you do it when we chase after you? So what is the problem of having a cold store facility in Kwai Chung? Do you have a timetable? On the other hand, going to the cold store of the importers, will that be problematic? And what is the reaction of the trade? And you are caught in between. How are you going to deal with that? Dr. Ho, that's a good question. You have to answer it. Well, we adopt a two-pronged approach. At Kwai Chung checkpoint, we will continue to study the possibility of having a cold store. You have been studying for several years. Initially, it is not a simple issue. It's about facility and space. And also, the size is a matter. Space is a matter because a container is very big. It is no simple issue. Therefore, we have a two-pronged approach. We have just adopted the approach of witnessing the breaking of a seal at the cold store. It is more difficult than doing this in Kwai Chung, but it's still possible. We will work on this, and we will continue with this. And after starting this with the importers and the cold store operators, if there is good cooperation, then the inspection process can be faster. Now, can you be brief, Dr. Ho? Can you give us a simple report and tell us what you will do? And then we can attach this to our report so that we can follow the matter up. It seems that you're not quite sure how you're going to do it well. So give us a report. Is it okay to write a report? Yes, okay. Yes, be brief. Yes, Tanya, please. Now, in the audit report, it is pointed out that the guidelines is different from the actual practice. and that's an important lesson. It seems that you're very compliant. You set up an office, but you don't specify the detailed needs, and the actual operation and manpower is different. And when Audit Commission tells you that it's wrong, then you say it's difficult, it's impossible, it takes a lot of time. And now you have to answer our questions, and therefore 2 weeks ago you started to work on this and worked on 2 cases, and they were possible. My worry is that at the end of the day we have nothing. No cold store at Kwai Chung, and they will tell us it is too difficult because the consignments are too many and there aren't enough manpower. Now you write it down in your guidelines. There must be reasons for that, and if you are not able to do it, there must be reasons. But are they excuses? The CFS has to be very careful about it and pay attention to this. At the end of the day, if that can't be done, then we're hanging middle. Okay, please stop here and let him respond to your question. Dr. Ho, just now the member referred to paragraph 2.77, and we asked you to give us a written reply to address the questions. Please do not just ward off our questions. We want to give you the chance to answer us. And if you have real difficulties and problems, please tell us. We have a clearance sheet. Now, what you've said is jotted down, and then we follow the matter up, and we have been following some cases for a decade. The PAC is always there, though we may not be always there. But the clearance sheets are still there. So you can take this opportunity to explain to us what you want to do. What are your targets? Now, after you've heard the Audit Commission, you say you will do it, but you're not able to do it. So can you explain to us how actually you can do it? Is it a risk-based inspection or general inspection? You have to address the issue. Tanya, we understand that it's rather confusing and is quite hasty. Now the containers come, containers go, the ships come, the ships go, and it's very costly. But we need to observe food safety, safety of our people. So you need to give us a report. Yes, Chairman. That's what I want to follow up. Yes, maybe ask Mr. Ho to follow up on the food import from Japan. In fact, we did compare between import by sea and import by air. I may have overlooked something. I hope that can be followed up. And next is about the import license. It's about paper handling. It's related to import by sea. As said by Dr. Ho, if a consignment has been picked to be inspected, there will be physical inspection, and you inform the importer in advance. When the importer brings the food in, they have to get an import license. The problem is reflected in the audit report. The consignment that has been picked and the importer who has been informed, the import license has been cancelled, and then a reapplication is then made. In paragraph 2.91, table 8, it can be seen from table 8 that for those import licenses selected for physical inspection, there was a high percentage of cancellation of licenses. There's a risk that cancellation of import licenses is used as a way to evade the CFS physical inspection of food consignments. It's a very serious problem. If you look at table 8, it's about 20% on average, but one consignment is too many. And if you may refer to case 5, and What a coincidence. It is about import from Brazil. Poultry from Brazil, the period from 1st January 2018 to 31st March 2018, 3 months' time, an importer applied 383 import licenses for importing meat and poultry, mainly from Brazil, the Netherlands, and the United States of America by sea. Of the 383 import licenses issued to the importer, 13 import licenses had been selected for physical inspection by the CFS. Of these 13 import licenses, 11 had been cancelled by the importer. The percentage is 85%. I want to ask, number one, whether the administration has followed the matter up, and two, with regard to the cancellation procedures, have you considered that the percentage is very high, and what are the requirements for making such cancellations? Of course, it's in the paper, and there may be new developments as usual. Dr. Ho, case 5. Chairman, if I may explain in greater detail, Table 8, Case 5, and Table 9 are about the cancellation of import licenses, which is a main concern. And the Audit Commission has asked us to conduct a study on the situation. Therefore, according to the advice of the Audit Commission, in July till December last year, we had a study. We deal with, we identify and also identify the situation and also the cancellation. We said that at our FIRLO, importers who have expired import licenses will have to be returned to us, and we will cancel such licenses. How many licenses have been issued and have not been used? If you refer to Table 9, there are quite a number of them. As for those licenses that have not been used, we don't have any formal statistics on whether they have been used or not. Now we have a study, and we know that how many have been issued and how many have not been used actually. Between June to October, import licenses issued 14,768 and used 12,100 odd. So the usage is 82%. So we can see that 82% has been used, far less than the number in Table 9. As for expired 2,600 odd, or 18%. We asked the importers to return them to us. 536 among 2,621. 20% were returned to us for cancellation. 2,085 such licenses were not returned to us. Now, in this exercise, we found that more than about 82% of the import licenses were used, and only less than 20% were not used. We spent a lot of efforts to urge the importers to hand back their import licenses if they were not used. And only 20% of them returned the unused licenses to us, and 80% did not. We tried to find out why they didn't return them. They said that they threw them away. or they had thrown them away. Some said that they had lost them, and some importers didn't answer us. These import licenses if they have expired, they may not necessarily return them to us, and the law does not require them to hand back the licenses.
證嘅條件。
Then after issue each export license and ask them to return them to cancel. We're most concerned that after the meat entered Hong Kong, they would deliberately evade reporting just to avoid physical inspection. If they don't inform us, we have no idea it arrived, and thus no inspection will be carried out. If this probably may not be the best direction to take, we suggest an alternative improvement measures for the import by sea. We'll work with the CEAND and using the E-man system to confirm which of the consignments have entered Hong Kong. If we check against the system and see that the importer had failed to report to FVHD when the consignment arrived and submit the relevant import documents in accordance to 132AK on the power granted by the Imported Game, Meat, Poultry, Egg Regulation to institute prosecutions. If the importer is in breach of the law, we put it in a surveillance list, and for any future imports consignment that would subject to physical inspection. I believe that that will be a more targeted solution instead of chasing them every time for the returning import license, because some of them they just won't listen. Well, I understand the voluntary nature is ineffective for 2.93. According to the operation manual, to prevent improper use of import license by importers, FIRLO need to spot out import license unused by importers for cancellation. So that's the responsibility of the FIRLO. Well, indeed, it is not the duty of the importer to surrender the license. This is the FIRLO that need to follow up. And further, the importer may, for example, import for a number of import licenses and reapply if the license expired, and keep some of them unused. When the import license is selected for physical inspection, the importer could replace the import license with an unused import license to import the same food consignment in order to evade physical inspection. Well, that's the biggest problem. Of course, I understand that you would have to you respect the government's corresponding units to facilitate the importers. If the FIRLO have a duty to do this and it was written in the operation, so it's a requirement. Well, it's good that you do the inspection of the cancellation. I see that the numbers seems to have a discrepancy compared to Table 9. So how to define time expired? Is it determined by you or the importer or by the month? Why are they able to keep this unused licenses, and would you actually tighten up the expiration time so that to make sure to notify? We try to strike a balance so that our colleagues don't need to bear too much responsibility, but also facilitate the traders, and then we can able to deterred unscrupulous importers to evade physical inspection and importing unsafe food. And after this, I will pass over to Mr. Stephen Ho after this. Dr. Ho, this license are really valid for 6 weeks. So if it expired, it will, well, if the time expired, it would be valid anymore. And for the operations manual, we'll continue to encourage the importers and to return the unused licenses for cancellation. If we stress that we must recover the unused licenses to check with any invasion of physical inspection, that might not be the most desirable approach. I got you already. Sorry for interrupt. I know you can work with the CNAD. However, there's more like a remedial. Like Mr. Stephen Ho said, well, the truck has already entered Hong Kong and then it's left Hong Kong. How can you trace the consignment? We try to intercept a source. That's why you claim that you have to break the seal for it and so on. I just don't want to, after it break the seal and after been distributed, and then you try to trace it afterwards. By then, that footwear will be consumed without you knowing. And in your manual, you claim this how you should do this, and yet you continue to ask the importers to do so on a voluntary basis. And yes, the FIRLO, how can they identify the unused import licenses? That's what you put down in your operation manual. As of now, you yet to explain how do they track. You seem to just do a investigation. So what step have you taken to track them? Let's say you have then institute this practice, and let's say we look to the forward-looking. So voluntary doesn't mean bad. And so what would you FIRLO would do if we don't coordinate? Shouldn't you revise your operation manual? So how should you proceed? You know that the director of audit come with a report, and you have response. Well, maybe I've asked the director of audit for the view on the relevant passages, so as you can answer directly to the question. So can the audit actually explain the problem? I'm afraid it may get confusing. So we mainly look at the mechanism and described it first. If we see any deficiencies and shortcomings or unclear areas, we'll ask for explanation, and they have explained that in their explanation. And that we have considered that and see that at hard to decipher. And for table 9, for the unused ones, on the bracket, and they claim they don't know whether the importer have used the license, even though it claimed to be unused. That the CFS have no idea which of the licenses have been used. That's why that we have the system in place. They need to have to chase them to cancel them to tally up. Well, since the what expire in 6 weeks anyway, but they have no idea what it wants. But for the past 6 months, they devote a lot of effort to carry investigation. I found the situation wasn't too bad. They're about 86% unused, while 20% of them they couldn't recover. Well, after they took 6 months to investigation before coming up with this picture. So we suggest that using information from EMAN 1 and 2 to coordinate with CEND to future improvements, so that to make this tally procedure redundant, as it's too difficult. That's my tentative view. So the report had laid out quite clearly. From Dr. Ho, I'm a bit confused. That's why I'm asking Director of Audit to explain, and then so that you can explain, because we need to set out in the report very clearly. So can you start over? Thank you, Director of Audit's supplement. The problem we're facing is that we're not able to carry out physical inspection of consignments, as they did not inform CFS. The director's suggested approach is one way that you actually locate all the import licenses to see where they are. If they importers couldn't provide them, then they show that they've tried to evade. That the law cannot authorize us, and even we issue reminders letter, they can just disregard it as not illegal. We don't have the authority to check where did the license go. So I would say no matter how hard we try, we can't root out this problem. So after we're doing investigation, we continue to go along the direction of chasing the import license and check the status. I divided that we used up a lot of manpower and resources and failed to address the problem. So instead we consider the whether they would to rule out any evasion of physical inspection. However, if we work with the CEND by using the EMAN 1 and 2 system to switch consignment have arrived. If they arrive and fail to inform us, and according to the law, we do have the right and can issue penalty. We can tell the importer that, well, you have consignment arrived but didn't inform us. We can prosecute you or issue penalties, and would put that importer on the blacklist, a surveillance list. And from then on, whenever the importer have a consignment arriving, that will definitely carry out physical inspection. We have other supporting measures. For example, for the health certificate, if they're providing the original copies, in the original copies, we will record it, and even if the import license have been cancelled, if using the same health certificate for another second import permission, it's already been recorded and marked. And if the consignment is marked for its inspection, it will continue to be subject to inspection. If those using photocopies, and now we are improving our system, and we'll include more details. Will verify against the number. If they're using the same health certificate for the copies, they will be caught. Hopefully, with all these measures, we can targeting this container for physical inspection. My final view is that on table 9, the unused licenses, there are quite a few reasons that are actually unused. But so CFS was actually look into the unused situation. I wonder, is it due to system upgrade and so on? Can this provide information? For example, they mentioned on the system what the new features will be in place that will help them to manage. I wonder, can they submit the relevant information? Can it be would it be included in the report? necessary? No further follow-up. I'll leave it to Ms. Stephen Ho. Dr. Ho, can you supplement a paper to explain? Dr. Stephen Ho, would you like to take a break now, or you want to ask till 10:49? Okay, let me finish this question. So after the break for value for money, we don't want to waste the administration's team's time. We don't need the CNAD commissioner to present. We can just excuse them. And for other inquiries, can do it in writing. If we need them, we consider whether we need the commissioner to stay after our break. Otherwise, we'll excuse them. Since these questions are surrounding CFS, Commissioner, before your break, do we have anything to say that can help us to understand the report? Or can you explain that in terms of E-Man, how your coordination of CFS and help them with their work? And Chairman, where E-Man is confirmed, at the last meeting already explained. And more recently, in our written reply to PAC, we have offered a detailed reply. For the operations of E-Man, as suggested, Chairman, you should refer to our written reply. For all other matters, the CEND at this stage have nothing particular to add. Thank you. I suppose that after the break, you don't have to return to the meeting. Stephen Ho will take a break at 10:45. Thank you for the commissioner. Last time we asked a lot of questions as whether subject consignments are under through 100% testing. I suppose we shouldn't continue with the Japan radiation issue. From Tanya Chan mentioned on the issue of import licenses. I know that Dr. Ho mentioned that the focus will be on whether somebody is abusing the system to evade physical inspection. I agreed with this method. So, that it will issue an import license, whether you're abusing it, or maybe it's some situation that they were left unused, and asking them to return it is a waste of time and a nuisance. I hope that the government should take note that whether there's any abuse. The question is, now that we're checking the import by sea, I'm not too certain about operations. When a container after arriving in Hong Kong, they wouldn't come from Shenzhen. So what's the time gap? Depends where they come from. I know. I think the shorter distance would be Taiwan or for the Shanghai or so on. We actually done a survey for Xiamen and for Taiwan. Well, they will arrive in 2 to 3 days. So Xiamen and Kaohsiung. So in 2 to 3 days, you have to consider how they would check that under the UC import license and what type of food in the consignment. For those 2 to 3 days, well, the short haul. However, for the longer haul, that would take 7 to 9 days. Will the government take a different approach to this food consignment to have advanced preparation? So, if they come a request to carry physical inspection after the goods have been loaded, for example, at the UCLU 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, this container, then they couldn't get away since their ship already arrived on its way to Hong Kong. Have you considered this, Dr. Ho? That we approach, let's say for those with short journeys and the long journeys. From the Brazil case, After the incident, request the importer that must provide true copies of the health certificate. Even though there's some impact to this trade, however, they actually managed. For those with longer journeys, we'd ask them to submit true copies of health certificate. Will encourage the trade to comply.
都例如
And as I said, at the time when they submit the health certificates, we would stamp a chop there. So even if the import license has been cancelled, then if you want to use the health certificate again for another consignment, and if it's been taken out for inspection, then the inspection will still be carried out. So these measures will be implemented in tandem. So we'll see how things go. In the long run, as far as the trade is concerned, if they are able to cooperate, even for consignments with longer shipping period, we hope that they will still be able to provide us with the original copy of the import license or the health certificate. What I'm particularly interested in is, to a certain extent, when we look at the audit report, apparently there are people who have abused the random checking mechanism. But then what about the recording system of the administration? So when they apply for the import license, well, they should be doing this in the name of the company. So have you conducted any statistics as to the number of licenses or license that has been cancelled involving a particular company? So what's the ratio? Let's say 5% or 10%. And if there is this track record, then you'll be stepping up the inspection. So I'm referring to the CFS. Tanya, you cannot go out because we need to have a quorum. All right, we're talking about the CFS. Okay, if they genuinely would like to abuse the system in order to avoid checking, so you have to find out the source of the problem and deal with it. So when did the administration find out that there have been cases of cancellation of import license? So how many discussions have taken place by the administration? So when did you first find out that it was a problem, and what actions have been taken? All right, there might be actions that are feasible and actions that have not been effective, because according to the audit report, well, there is this problem of cancellation. If it's the first time that it ever dawned on you that it's a problem, then it's a big problem. And if you had found it out earlier on, but then you had not dealt with it effectively, then it means that you have not discharged your duty diligently. But then if you had known it long beforehand, and yet you had not been able to resolve the problem, well, this is still a problem of competence. So please let us know what the problem is. And then with regard to the registration of companies where the import licenses have been cancelled and so on, so let us know the details. Dr. Ho? Well, in doing the analysis, we have not conducted any detailed analysis concerning companies with the largest number of unused and cancelled import licenses. I understand that this problem has been there for a while, and we had thought about solutions to this problem, but then according to my understanding, they have not been very effective, and this time, thanks to the audit for pointing this out again to us. So we do attach a lot of importance to this, and a number of improvements have been made, and we can see that there are some results already. So the situation has improved. We will continue to step up our efforts. So how many internal discussions have taken place, and what's the result? Dr. Ho? I'll have to check. So have you discussed that? And if you have, how many discussions have there been? And if not, why not? Yes, definitely we have discussed that. As to whether or not there are formal records, so was it an informal discussion, or were there formal meetings to discuss that? Because he's trying to help you understand the problem. that's the reason why he has been asking so many questions. And that would also bring out if you've got the right attitude in dealing with the problem, and do you have the right resources to tackle the problem, and so on. So he's trying to find out what the problem is. And if you've never looked into that formally, then that's a problem. So have you ever done that? Well, I'll have to go back and check. All right, thank you. I hope that he can provide us with formal documentation to show that it's on your agenda and you've discussed that instead of just discussing it while you're having a cup of coffee. Because according to the audit report, well, they've done something and something has been achieved. So I'd like to know how serious you have taken the matter, and I'd like to know to what extent have you discussed the matter. So that's about your attitude and also how you discharge your duties. I hope that you'd understand it. Okay? The administration did not pay any particular attention to companies or individuals whose registration has not been used, because for members of the public using this system, well, they've never thought about abusing it at all. That's the reason why you have not looked into this. But then for the number of documents that have been cancelled, apparently, well, for the entire community and also the number of importers and so on, well, you're talking about 201 documents, and if they are concentrated in several companies, then it's a big problem. All right, so out of the 13 that have been checked, 11 have been cancelled. So 85% is a very high ratio. So I'd like to know why that high percentage. The reason why I wanted to check your minutes. That's the reason. That's because I'd like to find out the reason for the cancellation, and also whether or not they are concentrated in a few sectors and what are the types of food that are involved. Are you able to answer that question? Well, in the past, we did not specifically analyze the situation, but then as I explained earlier, with the new measures in place, all right, after they've been imported and if they fail to submit the documents, then we can take out prosecution against the importers. So do you have a blacklist, so to speak, involving these companies? And what types of food are involved? All right, the ratio is 85%. It's a very high ratio. So looking forward, after looking at the report, so your department doesn't have a long history, so we understand this. But then you have to have a system in place, and Mr. Ho has asked so many questions. It has highlighted the lack of an effective system, or you might have been too busy. But then the department and the bureau have to give you sufficient resources in order to back you up. And you can also ask the efficiency unit to help you, because during your day-to-day operation, it's very hard for you to come up with improvement measures, and the report has brought out a number of problems. So have you looked into that? Do you have a blacklist? All right, if companies A, B, and C have been applying for many import licenses without using them at all, then you will have to understand what the loophole is. So for us, after reading the report, we do have the duty to point that out to you. And then please give us an honest answer so that we can have a better understanding. We are not just blindly criticizing you. Thank you for your constructive comments, Chairman. So after understanding it, so in the past you have not done it, right? Well, for the monitoring list, yes, if there are companies that are abusing the system, we'll prosecute them. Well, I was asking if you had a system. I'm not doubting that you don't have the right attitude, but then you have to have a system in place. In the past, there's a lack of a mechanism to look into this. Now that you have this audit report to remind you of the shortfall. Okay, after reading the report, a number of measures have been adopted. So there have been loopholes. So have you had meetings to discuss it, and how are you going to ensure that this will not happen again? Chairman, yes, the answer is in the positive. We will implement the new measures. And also for the importers, if we notice that they've been abusing the system, we will also be setting up this checklist, so we'll be targeting them more effectively. All right, do you have the resources to do it? Because you also need to have the approval from the higher authority before you can do it. All right, if you don't have the resources, then even if you have a heart to do or to put things right, you simply don't have the resources to do it. Okay, we have the problems, and then even if you were given extra resources, you won't be able to do it without an effective mechanism. Chairman, let me supplement. Recently, after looking at the situation, we have also noticed that there are some 35 importers who have had this track record of applying for import licenses, and then afterwards they would apply for the cancellation of these licenses, and they've been blacklisted already. Okay, you've started to look into it. Eugene, are you going to answer the question too? So are you aware of the problem? Sorry, speaker's not coming through. Well, as far as resources are concerned, if the CFS, upon its review, thinks that there are areas that would require further resources, we'll be prepared to support it. So please rest assured, we'll be giving them the support that they need. Well, they don't have a lot of manpower. They have limited resources. They only have 22 people, right? How many people are working on this? Okay. So extra resources will be given to them. Yes, Chairman. In fact, if you look at the past few years, the average bureau, and also as far as the central government is concerned, in terms of the resources given to the CFS, there have been increases. And of course, we attach a lot of importance to the audit report. All right, for the KCCH checkpoint, there is no monitoring, there is no officer stationed there. It's just a cubicle for them to work in. Yes. With regard to policy support to the CFS, there will be very close liaison between us. For the day-to-day operation, we will have regular meetings with them, and if they have any difficulties or resource needs, both in the past and in the future, we'll be giving them more support. So in para 2.77, so you've got all the policies in place, and yet they've not been able to do it. You will have to find out why they've not been able to do their job properly. So it's not that the staff did not try hard. So you will have to find out the reason. Yes, Mr. Ho? Yes, I'd like to move on. And I'd like to thank the administration because finally they have been able to tell us that 35 importers might be more problematic. I'd like to paint this picture to the public so they have a better idea. So how many importers are involved? Are we talking about 1,000 or 10,000, or is just 60, and out of the 60, 32 have been problematic? So can you tell us exactly how serious the problem is? Dr. Ho? So just give us a rough estimate. I don't need very accurate figures. Yes, Dr. Wong? Or Dr. Ho or Dr. Wong? So two doctors, either one of you.
容許我用少少時間解釋。
Allow me to spend some time on this. Yes, speak to the microphone. Just now, we talk about Table 8. Table 8 and also Case 5. I'd like to say a bit about the background. Well, the importers, when an importer tries to cancel an import license, there are many reasons. Let's say if he's importing a consignment, and there are many commercial details that are involved. So when he applies for an import license, yes, we do facilitate business operations, and our office will issue that license within a day. upon receipt of his application. But then at the time of import, with the import license, he'll be better rest assured. That's why very often they'll apply for the import license in advance. But then sometimes in commercial dealings, he might no longer need that consignment, or the destination might have changed, and then he'll just cancel the import license. And of course, chances are that he might have seen that well, there is a need for a physical inspection to be carried out, and as a result he might decide to cancel the license. But then there are a number of measures in place. For example, in case 5, he has applied for import licenses, and then subsequently he canceled the licenses. And as Dr. Ho just said, we now have a mechanism in place in the event that he has submitted a health certificate to apply for an import license, and if for other reasons he has cancelled the license afterwards, then we would be marking certain footnotes in the license so that our staff would know that well, this importer has applied for an import license, and then after he has been chosen for physical inspection, and then if he submits the same health certificate again to us, then our mechanism will show that he has applied for an import license before, and then after he has been told that the consignment would have to be physically checked, and then he canceled the license, and now he's submitting the same health certificate again, and then for this next consignment, it will be checked again. And if they try to make use of this in order to avoid the physical inspection to be conducted on the consignment, that will not work. So that's how the mechanism will work. And as we said, well, Mr. Ho asked us if we had checked the records. Indeed, we have had a lot of discussions on this because, as the audit just pointed out, the situation might be somewhat complicated because for the import by sea and also the import license system and so on. In fact, we have had many meetings to look at how we can plug the loopholes. In the past, well, in between October and November 2018, with regard to import of foods by sea, we have checked the situation. Well, from October to November 2018, looking at the number of import licenses for foods imported by sea for meat and poultry, for the physical inspections that have to be carried out, there were some 300, and about 70 or 19%, whereby the importers have applied for the cancellation of the licenses. As Dr. Ho said, that involves some 30 plus importers, and we followed up on that, and we looked at the situation, and for the time being we haven't been able to identify any cases involving the import license being checked for physical inspection, and as a result the importers decided to cancel the license. But then we do have this mechanism in place, and if they want to cancel the license for a consignment that has to be physically inspected, and then if they use the same health certificate to apply for another consignment to be imported, then that consignment will also have to be physically inspected. So they would not be able to make use or take advantage of the system in order to avoid physical inspections. Okay, Mr. Ho? All right, the figures might not be able to show the actual situation. I do agree with what you said. For the import licenses and also food safety, there is no direct causal link between the two. But then from this, you can see that there are commercial problems. That is, all right, for 85% of those, if they can cancel it, then is that superfluous in terms of what you've been doing? So the threshold for issuing food licenses might be too low. So that's something for your consideration. But then we do understand, as Dr. Wong also specifically pointed out, that for the foods imported by sea is a very complicated situation. So we've been running terminals and so on. So we understand that there are different circumstances requiring the change of the routing and so on, and as a result there might have been changes. So Dr. Ho, if the documentation is not complete, then prosecution will be taken out against them. So there is a chance that you might prosecute them, or you're sure that you would prosecute them in the future. So I'm concerned about what might happen. That is, you might be exercising your discretion. We might be forcing you to step up food safety, but then it might backfire. So Dr. Ho, can you explain a bit further whether or not the actual logistics will be affected, and will they be able to comply fully with your food safety requirements? Because in actual situation, if they are not able to provide the original copies or copies of the health certificates, and in some circumstances, if the documentation is not complete, then will they be inadvertently caught by the wrong side of the law?
多謝主席。
Dr. Ho. Thank you, Chairman. We will consider the importers who imported their goods into Hong Kong. We identify them through the E-man, and we have found that they have not submitted imported documents, and they have not informed us. That's in breach of the law. When we issue an import license, we require them to inform us, and then if they don't do so, then we prosecute them. So you see them in E-man. How many such cases have you identified? Do you investigate every case, or you do it selectively? Why they did not supply the documents? Was there a change in the system or what? Before we start our prosecution, we try to understand the situation of the importer. How many cases of prosecution do you have? Well, please give us a number. Yes, we try to understand why they don't inform us. Just now, Mr. Ho asked how many importers are problematic, food importers are problematic. In Table 16, among the number of registered food importers, how many are exempted importers? There are 13,000 odd food importers. Many have been registered, but many might have folded up, and there may only be 3,000 remaining, and actually there will just be 100 or so importing food into Hong Kong. So I just want to know the real picture. I will not pursue the details of the number, but I want to know whether there are only a handful of importers who regularly cancel their licenses, or whether it's a general practice. We have asked next on food imported from Japan. We have asked that in respect of radiation. But I want to follow up on the partition flats or partition units in Kwai Chung, photo 19. In figure 19. In 2015, the Food and Health Panel asked the administration to set up a checkpoint in Kwai Chung. They move tables and chairs there, just like us replacing chairs and tables every session or every term. Well, since the facilities are very basic, they are not able to discharge their duties fully. I want to ask the administration with regard to the discussion on the functions of the checkpoint at Kwai Chung. Have you discussed the needs, whether they need a cold store, whether they need other facilities? Now they have to conduct inspection at the cold stores of importers. I want to know the locations. Are these cold stores distributed throughout Hong Kong, spread out throughout Hong Kong, or are they concentrated in one or two districts in Hong Kong? That has implications on resources. If there are 50 or 6 cold stores all over the place, then you will have you need a lot of manpower. But if most of them are in Kwai Chung, then you can put in more resources in cover majority of the cold stores. So 2 questions, Dr. Ho. Chairman, with regard to cold stores, there are quite a number of cold stores, and they're located in different places, some in Kwai Chung, some in Sha Tin, Fo Tan. Dr. Ho, do they need to apply for a license from you if they operate a cold store? How many cold stores are there? They can't have a cold store anywhere they like. They have to fulfill certain conditions. Do they? Or don't they? Well, yes. The cold stores are regulated by the FEHD. After the meeting, we can provide information on their locations in response to Mr. Ho's question. In fact, the information is available in the internet, and we can draw up a checklist for you. Mr. Ho has asked the first question, which has not been answered, concerning KCCH. Dr. Ho, yes, there are minutes. And when we set up the checkpoint in Kwai Chung, we did talk to the trades. And we have projection, we have PowerPoints, and they are put on the internet. So I just want to know, what did they discuss, what was possible, what was not possible. If you just show me the PowerPoints or photos, I don't know what had been discussed. Are there minutes or are there summaries? You don't need to have every detail. Talking face to face is one way of communication. Yes, we go back and collate the information. Well, no one wants to be regulated, and therefore people try to evade the regulation. The issue is whether the regulation is reasonable or not. Now, sometimes the trade says, don't bother with me, and then you just stop the regulation. I think there's a need to deal with that properly. Can I ask the final question? And then we can release the C&E department. I want to know this. Photo 31. The seal was broken, and then you came to inspect the food. Every day, on average, how many inspections do you do? Not in Kwai Chung, outside Kwai Chung. With regard to import by sea, food imported by sea, we only conduct this measure in Kwai Chung and also at the cold stores. Generally speaking, food imported by sea, which is brought to the cold store, is put at a designated place in the cold store, and when we come, we check the number and also the batch and consignment to see if they comply with information provided in the import license. How many cases do you handle on average per day? Now, well, this is mainly done at Kwai Chung, and the number is in the report, not a big number. Since 2015 up till now, some tens. I asked for inspection outside Kwai Chung. You work on one case, or you work on 50 cases per day, or you have one person doing it, or you have 50 persons doing that. I know that you have a dozen or so in Kwai Chung because there's no cold store. But what about those done outside Kwai Chung? If you can not answer it now, then answer me after the break. In paragraph 2.82, in 2017, we conducted 3,616 physical inspections. How many people do that? Physical inspections were done at cold stores. How many staff members doing that? How many teams, if not number of persons? And please allow me to give you an answer later. Yes, please come back to us. Okay, thank you. We have a break of 15 minutes. Sorry, Tanya.
拆咗個燒牌。